Gavrilo Princip and Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination. World War I began on June 28, 1914, when 19-year-old Bosnian Serb Gavrilo Princip killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Princip and a band of youthful revolutionaries were driven by nationalist aspirations to overthrow Austro-Hungarian rule. A series of events triggered by their activities resulted in the mobilization of European powers and the outbreak of war on the continent. Europe was a little different in 1914 than it is now. With France, Italy, and a few smaller nations crammed in, the majority of the continent was split between the German, Russian, and Austro-Hungarian empires. The key to understanding why the killing took place is that final one, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and its tense relations with its southern neighbor, Serbia. After Austria-Hungary occupied Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia developed a hatred for the country, initially in 1878, and then legally in 1908. Serbian nationalists felt that Bosnia-Herzegovina should be a part of their nation because it had a large Serb minority. A few years prior, in 1903, Serbia had deposed its pro-Austro-Hungary authorities and installed a government that was not particularly fond of the empire. These tensions only grew by 1914 as Bosnian Serb and Serb nationalists fueled the steadily spreading fire by establishing armed groups to achieve their territorial goals. Their ire was further stoked by Franz Ferdinand's political ambitions, which were important because he was the heir apparent to the Austria-Hungary throne. Ferdinand supported a more cohesive empire with improved political representation for its Slavic subjects in Southeast Europe. Although it sounded fantastic on paper, Serbian nationalists wished to stop it because they believed it would only undermine their aspirations for a greater, independent Serbian nation. The Black Hand was established in May 1911, but it was more popularly known as Unification or Death. The name of this covert revolutionary group reflected its ultimate objective, which was to secede the southern provinces from the Austro-Hungarian Empire and establish the larger, purportedly ethnically united Kingdom of Serbia. Gavrilo Princip, a young, impoverished Bosnian Serb who had been radicalized since childhood and had made friends with other radicals who were committed to changing the course of history, shared their views while not being a member of the Black Hand. He was later introduced to the Young Bosnia organization. He shared many others' views that Serbia had a moral obligation to liberate the Yugoslavs who were still ruled by Austria-Hungary. After visiting and residing in Belgrade, Princip was just 19 when he first saw other Bosnian Serbs who shared his background. Other co-conspirators were already revolutionary exiles due to their socialist views, while some were students. Other nationalists had made several attempts on the lives of government officials over the 10 years preceding 1914. The most famous of these was Bogdan Zaric, who in 1910 tried to kill Bosnian Governor General Marian Varasanin in Sarajevo. Before he turned the gun on himself, he fired 5 shots in his direction. Just a few years later, Princip and his accomplices were inspired by this incident. Among others, Bosnia's relations with the rest of the empire had deteriorated to an all-time low in 1913. General Oskar Potiorek imposed martial law, shut down Serbian cultural and educational organizations, and dissolved the Bosnian parliament after declaring a state of emergency. Naturally, this only made Princip even more enraged, and he joined up with 2 other acquaintances, Nedeljko Čabrinović and Trifko Grabić, to form a group whose ultimate objective was to emulate the previous Tsarit's example, but with more success. These kinds of designs were not unique to them. Princip already had a nice relationship with the Black Hand, but they were already busy making their plans. Danilo Ilic, a well-known organization member in Sarajevo, wrote Srebrenović a message with a newspaper clipping about the Archduke's scheduled visit and the words "greetings" written in the margins. Princip believed the same thing when Srebrenović showed him the paper. This was their chance. It was not the first time the young men had met. Along with Srebrenović and every member of the Young Bosnia Group, a revolutionary anti-Austro-Hungary group, Ilic and Princip were already pals. Ilic would subsequently say that he had fully planned the attack, but in reality he had been more of the puppet than the puppeteer. The three youngsters then sought advice from Major Tankosić, a Serbian commander and one of the Black Hand's founders, who consented to arm the gang to execute the attempt. They informed Ilic, who promptly coordinated events in Bosnia and sent 3 more young revolutionaries to Sarajevo to meet with the others. They were Mehmed Basic, Vaso Čubrilović, and Svetko Popović. The 7 young Bosnians started their effort with 4 pistols, 6 bombs, and a cyanide tablet that they were to ingest just after the assassination. The date was June 28th, 1914. Before heading to the City Hall to launch a new state museum, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his spouse, Duchess Sophia, were scheduled to tour a military post. Along their path, Danilo Ilic had placed the assassins, each young guy carrying a bomb. However, it turns out that killing is much simpler in principle than in reality. Initially, Mehmed Basic lost his composure and was unable to throw his device as the motorcade passed by. The same thing happened to Čubrilović, who noticed the automobile approaching but did nothing. Srebrenović, however, is not in the same category. He displayed all the bravery of a 19-year-old who had never witnessed combat as the automobile came down his section of the route and tossed his bomb, which immediately rolled off the rear of the Archduke's car and under the wheels of the one behind in the procession, killing no one but hurting about 20. What came next resembled a Looney Tunes cartoon rather than actual events. Srebrenović jumped into the river after swallowing his cyanide dose right away. Unfortunately, the pills were outdated and useless. So instead of killing the young student, they only caused him to throw up. Srebrenović was hauled out by police, beaten, and brought into arrest after finding himself standing in 13 millimeters of water instead of being washed away by the river, which had dried up due to the heat. Disappointed and enraged, the others disappeared into the turmoil of the masses. They had failed. Surprisingly, though, that was not the group's final opportunity to meet the Archduke. Ferdinand decided to check on the injured, instead of going to the hospital after learning that the bomb had hurt others. However, the Archduke's drivers did not receive that communication and proceeded with the original plan. At the nearby Moritz Schiller Café, Gavrilo Princip was bemoaning the group's shortcomings when a turn of events altered the path of history. The car carrying the Archduke was ordered to halt almost precisely in front of the young rebel. Princip recognized his opportunity as the automobile stopped and went into slow reverse. Pulling out the pistol Tankosić had given him, he summoned the nerve to shoot Archduke Franz Ferdinand in the neck and his wife Sophia in the abdomen at close range. Before they arrived at the hospital, both had passed away. 25 people were later found to have been involved in the assassination. The rest were not as fortunate as Mehmed Basic, who managed to flee to Serbia. Princip, Shabrinovic, and Grabej were imprisoned at Theresienstadt, where they would all die within the next 4 years, while Čubrilović, Ilić, and fellow conspirator Jovanović were executed because they were over 20. At the very least, Princip, Shabrinovic, and Popovic did not regret their actions, according to interviews conducted with them during their trials. However, they also failed to foresee the following step. The Austro-Hungarian Empire and Serbia had utterly lost all decorum and diplomacy within a month. Despite knowing that the Russian Empire was now supporting them, Serbia nevertheless gave in to some of Austro-Hungary's requests. This included permitting their authorities to participate in the Serbian investigation into the assassination and stifling anti-imperial propaganda. However, in response to the lack of a comprehensive agreement, Austro-Hungary severed diplomatic ties. With the assurance that Russia would help them, the Serbian army mobilized. Having fostered an alliance with the German Empire, Austria-Hungary did not stand alone either. The notorious blank check was given to the Austro-Hungarian government by Kaiser Wilhelm II and his administration in an attempt to reassure their ally that they would receive unwavering support for their efforts in the Balkans. Encouraged by their allies, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914, and that same evening shelled Belgrade, the country's capital. As European nations and powers rushed to uphold friendship and alliance pacts, a near domino effect of animosity ensued in the days that followed. According to historian Christopher Clark, a furious 19-year-old lad named Gavrilo Princip was the primary cause of Europe's sleepwalk into war. We sincerely appreciate your support of the Echoes of the Past YouTube channel. If you appreciate our work, please subscribe to Echoes of the Past so that we can continue to provide you with more engrossing historical movies. For more historical videos, be sure to check out our channel.